So we have 3 fantastic presentations today. We will take questions at the very end, so please hold on to them until all 3 speakers have spoken. I'm going to start by introducing Robin Cochran, the Executive Director for the Government of Alberta. They're going to start us off today. So please, a round of applause.
Hi, everyone. You found the room okay? Because I know it's a little confusing with the A and D, so it's great to see everyone. So I'm the Executive Director for the Department of Assisted Living and Social Services within the Government of Alberta, and my portfolio is homelessness and housing supports within that ministry. So I applaud you for coming where government is speaking, because that can also not be that interesting. So I'm going to tell you about a project that I've been with the Alberta government for 25 years, and this project is one of the projects I'm most proud of the innovative work that we've been able to do. So an overview of what I'll be talking about is I want to set the context of what Edmonton looked like. So I'm from Edmonton, Alberta. Northern cold community. I want to set the context for what Edmonton was experiencing in the fall and winter of 2023 leading into 2024. So we had growing encampments in Edmonton. We had a police force that was dealing with increased gang-related activities within those encampments. We had individuals dying in those encampments due to fire safety hazards and a lot of drug use within those encampments, and just a lot of really not good things in a direction for a city. A lot of social disorder, business communities upset, and not a lot of place for these individuals to go. So provincial response, we started working on a shelter response. So leading into the winter of 2023-24, we had 575 shelter spaces run by faith-based organizations within Edmonton. So we increased those shelter spaces, and I'm not proposing shelter spaces are a solution to this, but we needed some place for people to go. So we increased shelter spaces to over 1,700. We also looked at smaller, more individualized shelter services, which included women's only, Indigenous-led shelters, and spread out in a geographical area so people could access those shelters more easily. So in December of 2023, the Edmonton Police Service approached the province saying, listen, we're going to take down these encampments. We're going to have a concerted effort. We want the province's help on the social services side. What can we do? Because right now we're taking encampments down, they're popping up 2 blocks over, and this isn't working. The enforcement alone issue is not working. What can you do to help? So it came to our ministry, what can we do to help? So we tossed around a lot of ideas. Where we landed was that a navigation center where we could coordinate government services, largely for these individuals who were being removed from encampments. We worked closely with the Edmonton Police. We worked with the City of Edmonton, and there was a cabinet committee that was struck that declared this was an emergency. All of that's important because you'll see through the stream of this, political will was really important to make this happen. So this was in December. The thought was that this navigation center in some form would open in January because we were dealing with very cold months and we wanted to ensure that individuals had access to supports. So I know everyone in the room has seen encampment tents, snow, very cold. So we scouted a variety of locations within Edmonton. We talked about having this right in a shelter. What would this look like? So we landed on a basement of a women's only shelter that was about to open. It was in between, it's downtown Edmonton, so it was in between 2 major colleges within Edmonton, but within walking distance to where the majority of our unhoused on how folks were. So we brought in supports into the Support and Navigation Center, largely provincial supports. So these supports included recovery coaches, mental health and addiction support. So if someone if they had opioid issues, they could get on virtual, connected to a doctor. They could receive a prescription within the Navigation Center. They could also get attached to mental health supports as well as other addiction supports, detox beds, that type of thing. We brought in financial supports, which included if emergency supports, if someone needed a hotel temporarily, if they needed income supports, if they needed to apply for AISH and needed help with that. We brought in primary care supports, community supports. If an individual needed to be connected to a primary care doctor, if they needed light touch medical, so wound support, that type of thing. We also brought in recovery coaches that did intake, so these peer workers working alongside people to connect them to supports. All of this is in one room. So really simple, tables, workers, room. We had 9 beds for people who were interested in being attached to supports, but maybe we couldn't get it for them that day. But the next day, then they could stay in the center. We had transportation to other shelters in the city because now we had enough shelter spaces for people, and they had their choice of where they wanted to go if they weren't comfortable in one of the bigger shelters. Housing workers, right on site, connecting individuals to the housing system, working towards them. So really the idea of the Navigation Center was based on connection to services. So this all happened, I will say, in a matter of 3 weeks. So very short timelines to bring this together. I thought that individuals would come, maybe, and they would be very angry that they were displaced and maybe not necessarily want help. This was meant to be a 30-day pilot, and we would figure out from there where we would go and how we would refine things if it worked. So I'm happy to say I was wrong with the reaction. People were really tired and wanted help. And so we had a lot of people come through the center. So our 30-day pilot is now a permanent center that is running. This is early days. This is what it looks like. So collaborative approach. And one of the coolest things in those early days, so we had transportation from the encampments. Police would say, hey, this is moving, your tents are coming down, but do you want help? And the premise of this place was we'll meet people where they're at. So if there were barriers, so maybe they wanted to bring a bike, or 5, or more. So we said you can bring 1 bike. So really meeting people halfway, or trying to. Pets were a big thing. We were told the barrier was, I have a pet, I can't go to shelters, I can't go there. So we accepted pets. And I will say early days, it was crazy with the pets because we had no idea what we were doing. So we had sheriffs on site who were holding pets in a van or holding a dog for 5 hours. So we learned very quickly that these individuals took care of their pets, we took care of the people. And that worked, and no issues since then, so not a barrier. We also heard couples, they can't go stay at a shelter and they want to remain together. So we have couple-only spaces in shelters. So really trying to figure out and meeting people the reason why they were saying no for help. So this is probably for most people in this room not a new thing. For government, this is a big deal, meeting people where they're at and removing barriers. So we opened January 17th, 2024, and it was minus 40. So I will never forget, an individual named Curtis came through the door. Our first, the poor fellow, he had a lot of people really interested in him because we were so happy someone came through the door. And he's like, I just want some soup. So that was fine. And we only had sandwiches, but we figured out, we went across the street and got him some soup. And that was a good lesson for us. Warm food on a cold day makes sense. We ensured that people are fed. We're really fortunate to be housed in the basement of a shelter, so meals were provided, hot meals provided. Those staying overnight were taken care of with the sheltering services. So expansion of the model. So our 30-day experiment turned into a long-term model. So we decided this was really great for Edmonton. We should try this in Calgary because we have two major cities in Alberta. So we opened in Calgary as a slightly different landscape. They have very coordinated social services in Calgary. Also, their encampment issue was not as pronounced as Edmonton. So where Edmonton's was really anchored around encampments, in those early days all individuals were coming from encampments, it soon moved to word of mouth that people were coming to the center because they found it useful, which was fantastic. I will also mention one of the services that we provide is ID on the spot. Free ID on the spot, legal, because you need ID for everything. So we opened 6 months later, July of 2024 in Calgary. Same type of success. It was not anchored around encampments, but people were coming because, as we all know, government services are not easy to navigate. In order to have them in one room, really useful. We did hear from housing workers that we had things that would typically take them a couple months to do, they could do in a couple hours. Also really important, individuals coming to the center, they choose what services they want. So we're not dictating services, like you need to go to every table because we think you need help for all of this. People pick and choose. Also, people come back, and we view that as a success. It's fine that they've been here before. So since opening between the two centers, we now have over 15,000 unique individuals who have gone through the center. So again, I was wrong. I thought 3 people would show up and they'd be mad and never come back. So I was completely wrong. We've had 15,000 people that have received connections to support. Out of those supports, our ID services by far are the most popular because you need ID for everything. So one of the advantages of a government agency overseeing this, I would not say running because we're typically not your front line, but is that we can bring in other government services as it makes sense. Also, there was a real will from our political leaders that they wanted this to work. So typically, like everyone, ID is a big thing, and we were told, no, you can't do this. It's going to take at least a month to get it. You can't. It was really interesting. Our premier's staff came in and said, well, you need ID here. On the first day we opened, there was not ID, which was a Thursday. By the Monday, we had access to ID. And it has facial recognition cameras, so there's fraud, but very limited fraud that happens, and that's important for government. There's ways to do that. So I just would say for a replication of this, political will is really important, but it is helping a substantial amount of people to make those connections. This is just a few kind of input from individuals from what we heard. So I will also say we did not follow some of the things that we heard or were told that we couldn't do. We do have Edmonton Police Service on site in our centers. In Edmonton, we were told you can't have police on site. People will not go, they will not feel safe. We don't have police at the door because that's not very welcoming, but we do have police on site. And we did an evaluation of the Edmonton Navigation Center, and the number one thing, both participants to the center and those working in the center liked having police service on site. And they're there, they do walk-arounds around the building to make sure that we're being good neighbors, but they also de-escalate situations that could be happening in a way that untrained folks can't. And it helps because we have a large amount of government workers on site. It helps them who are not necessarily as comfortable as they should be with this clientele. And it also makes the participants feel safe because it's a very calming, orderly way. I will also say for the individuals accessing the center, incredibly amount of patience, which I would say that our regular population does not have. They will come in and they will sit and they will eat and patiently wait, where I think most of us would be losing our minds, especially as our numbers have grown. Typically in a day between Calgary and Edmonton, we were seeing between 50 and 60 unique individuals coming through the center in a day. We're now up to 100 on average coming through. So Edmonton, the picture that you saw, we have moved that center because we outgrew it. I don't know what's going on. That's fine. So we outgrew the center, so we did move just for expanded space. We are looking at potentially maybe in Calgary the same thing, because we don't want people to feel crowded on top of each other. We could not have done this without the support of our community partners. Yeah, that's okay.
No, it's not.
I can just talk. I can talk. It's fine.
You have 7 slides. They're all there. Just click through.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, maybe I went through them all. That's all good. It's just me. It's all good. So, really proud of this project. It's not something, like I said, government. Often we are the funder and we have a lot of rules to follow, and we don't get the opportunity to be innovative and correct things on the fly and given the latitude to problem solve and really meet the population and hear what they need and try and meet that. So that's Calgary and Edmonton. There are options for smaller rural, which we're calling pop-up centers, like kind of a day where the community, it's more community-led, but really around this idea of bringing government services along with some key community services that people can access. So that's all I have, but thank you. I look forward to your questions, and yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for that. So our next presentation is Alison Segardo from Senior Services Society of BC.
And there's an audio on it, so that should play too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, I'm Alison Salgado. I'm the CEO of Senior Services Society. And it was really nice to hear Robin, and I wish we had the ability to do what you did. That's amazing. Our agency is a community-based nonprofit with a total P&L of 1.2 million. So if you can imagine the scale, so that's what we're doing. And our focus in my presentation is on seniors who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, often for the first time between the ages of 60 and 90. Until then, they've lived in their home and they find themselves homeless. We've been doing this work for just over 3 decades, and in the last 6 years, we've reimagined what support for seniors who are homeless looks like, independent seniors, that is, and I'm happy to share who those seniors are. So it's a defined group, so to speak, and we understand the limitation, the pathways that they follow to homelessness, and Maiden BC model, which is our SHINE program, Seniors Housing Information and Navigation Ease, that has seen really good success over the last 6.5 years. So some context for the BC province. 15% of the seniors in BC are low income. Half of the seniors live on under 35,000. So if you can imagine, living on that with all of your expenses at the time when you need the most supports. And that number has gone up from the last point in time count by 5 times in the last 10 years. The 2025 point in time count has not been shared publicly yet. And we understand that that number has gone up even further. In some cities, about 42% of the homeless are seniors, and in others, 30%. So you can just imagine the scale of this. This is our hope, that seniors have agency and are able to access the supports they need when they need it. And from all the work we've done, and I'll speak to it a little bit later, the supports for seniors need to be at the city level. So through the province, but at the city level, because they can't move too far, and they need to be able to access the supports in their community. Also taking the Indigenous definition of homelessness, where it's connection to people, to land, to water. It is that connection that's important. It's not the physical space alone. So on to the pathways. You know most of it, but I didn't want to assume it. So I'm going to run through it quickly. Cost of living, no-brainer. Cost of living has been constantly increasing, and for most low-income seniors, that's a problem. What we've seen increasingly has been the loss of a loved one, either through death or divorce, particularly for the contingent that are now in the age group of 70 to 90, where quite often the woman was the homemaker, finds themselves single and with the loss of their spouse, thought their spouse was really good at financial planning and discovers that wasn't true. And they come to us quite desperately, not just low-income seniors who are in rental units, but even people who own their own unit and have a mortgage to pay. They go, well, we can't pay it. So there's a fire sale now for that unit. Timing of taxes. I'm very pleased with what the federal government has recently done around low-income seniors automatically having to be assumed to have taxes filed so they don't lose their GIS and their benefits, because that was a problem of its own, where the system created seniors who are homeless if they forgot or they were in hospital and they didn't file on the deadline, even if they didn't owe taxes. Provincial and federal funding gap. This was a particular problem in BC in 2018. 22% of the clients we saw that year were caught between provincial and federal funding and made homeless on their 65th birthday. So they had Service Canada sent out the letter a year before, and of course a low-income senior had moved multiple times since they first filed with them. So the letter never reached them, and on their 65th birthday, funding stopped. Happy to say, with advocacy and work, last 2 years, we've had 2 seniors in that gap. So that was a big problem. It isn't true across the province yet, so we've got more work to do. Assessments may be a bit of a surprise, but for seniors who own their own strata, when they have a leverage of an assessment because of modernization that's needed, quite often they can't afford to get, or they can't afford the payments for the assessment, or they cannot. Their income doesn't allow them to access a loan from a bank. So they often end up with a fire sale, and that, of course, is the start of the downturn. Loss of employment, we see that steadily for seniors. When the organization has to restructure, seniors are invited to exit first, and particularly now. Sponsorship breakdown, we see that increasingly, and it's heartbreaking. We don't have enough numbers right now for one of them, which is seniors who are brought to support parents or young parents with children. The moment the children are no longer requiring support, seniors have been deposited at the entrance of emergency rooms, like unwanted children from pregnancies in the 20s and 30s. They have no status, they don't speak the language, and they have no money. So that is a startling trend that we're beginning to see. It's not enough of a number to make it a concern, but it is worrying. So as a person who is an immigrant myself, if there's one thing I ask all of our team to do is to ensure that seniors have access to learning a local language, if nothing else, to be able to ask for help in emergencies. Housing. Universal design is so critical. A lot of the older products that were built don't have doorways, particularly to amenity spaces like laundry rooms that allow a scooter or a mobility vehicle to go through the door. And if a senior can't access that, they can't do their laundry, often the landlord begins to think that they probably can't take care of themselves, and they end up with a crisis eviction for no other reason than the building wasn't built to accommodate that, to help them age in place. They also, on the other hand, not sick enough and they're able enough so they don't qualify for home health because they can bathe themselves, feed themselves, and they can cook. So they're caught between the system. Co-ops, and if anybody's in a co-op or runs a co-op, this is not for all co-ops, but an increasing trend. Co-ops don't have a regulatory body. They're governed individually. So if you have a family co-op and the senior is now overhoused and ages in place, even if they contributed for 30 years to the co-op, quite often we see that they're leveraged with a $500 to $1,000 monthly charge when they can no longer contribute. That's problematic. And of course, when they can't pay, they're made homeless. And all of this in context where they not only lose their home, but they lose their community because they have to find a home in another community. City-specific shelters, and not knocking at what Alberta's done, that's great, but shelters in the traditional sense is not suitable. And my first image was that, of mats on the floor and bunk beds. Doesn't work for seniors. Or to line up at 10 o'clock in the night and leave at 7 in the morning. Again, doesn't work for them. Community spaces, just places, as I said, with the laundry room to be on a floor that they can access. And supports to age in place. Light touch supports that help a senior age in place, so critical. Health, not a pathway you'd think of naturally for homelessness, but that's been our experience. If a senior doesn't have access to a doctor, has signs of cognitive decline, quite often the landlord sees them forget their keys a couple of times and they forget something else. They begin to wonder if they're going to leave the stove on and probably burn the building down. And in advance of something really serious happening, the senior is evicted. That's on the front end from attachment to health. Exit from health is its own problem. If a senior, for example, we had 3 years ago in November, we had 4 calls, very similar to each other. A senior had a stubbed toe, ended up in hospital. And the hospital provides a discharge plan from day one that gets amended or updated. In this case, the senior's situation got worse. They ended up with gangrene, had an amputation, and were in the hospital for 3 months. On the day of discharge, they were advised by the doctor at noon they were going to be discharged. They called their landlord and said, well, we're ready to come home. And the landlord says, well, I thought you were dead. Your room has been relet and all your belongings were thrown out. So they didn't know. They went into the hospital for an ailment. They came out and they were homeless. That week, we had 4 calls like that. And that's its own problem. Digital was touched on. Everything that a senior needs has access through digital, and we don't have enough digital access in Canada, and it's quite predatory. There are really complicated systems, so that's what seniors deal with. Cost of medications is its own problem. Multiple levels of care. When there's a couple that is aging together, and they require 2 different levels of care, quite often the person with more independent levels of care is the one who's most at risk of homelessness. A caregiving we've already talked about. Well, the number of systems that seniors intersect with are so many, and they just don't communicate. This is the result, seniors falling through the cracks, quite literally. Taking all of that we talked about as far as the challenges, this is our vision, and Shine has taken to building these systems piece by piece. The biggest one, of course, is awareness. When we have conversations, other than with a group like yourself, truly everybody in this room is a senior or a senior in training. This is about us. And it's difficult when you have a conversation with people and they say, really, seniors having problems with housing? Aren't they the group that are constantly cruising and having, and it's not true. They don't have a sense of this population at all. So here's what we've tried to do. Shine program takes into account 4 elements. A navigation, much as Alberta has, which is a navigation service for seniors that navigates all the systems they need. An outreach service that actually goes with the senior to the services they need, whether it's the bank or health or whatever they need to get their paperwork. 4 units, if you can imagine a city of about 100,000 people, 4 units of temporary housing. One is a rapid access unit where a senior, like the one I told you about from hospital, can be picked up from a hospital or who's on the street and placed there till they get their paperwork and get all their supports in place. That's up to 30 days. And typically they stay there for 2 to 3 days in our experience, but they can stay up to 30 days and they get a room with a door and 3 meals. From there they move into 3 units of temporary housing, which is, again, a private room with a door and a case manager that works with them, not only to identify the challenges that got them into homelessness, but to be able to address it, and then to be able to move into permanent affordable housing. And the model we've developed has been completely scalable. We started with New Westminster, which is a city of about 100,000 people. It worked really well, and now we are in 13 cities as of this month in the province, and they're scalable. So cities that are super cities like Vancouver, which has 600,000, or smaller cities like Thornhill and Chase, which have about 5 to 10,000 people. So completely scalable. This is what the model looks like today. So with the exception of the Better at Home program, and it's quite busy, but we started from the left. As I said, awareness was our biggest challenge. So with a small community-based agency, we started with social media and just making the case on social media. We started to have community of practice where anybody who wanted to support a senior could come to it at no cost and learn what we had learned and share it. And then we started a podcast series called Fridays with Seniors, where we talked with subject matter experts and service providers on the challenge and the solution that worked so that it could be shared. The same thing around housing. We had navigation in place and information and referral. The difference being information and referral is light touch when a family member wants to help or an independent senior wants just direction to go do whatever they need to do. They don't need much more. Navigation when it's a little bit deeper. And then we partnered with agencies. We have none of our own housing, so we partnered with agencies that did independent housing or agencies that provided supports for people exiting corrections or with mental health and addictions, because we didn't have that. So right now, seniors can choose which way they want to go, and our team will work with them to get there. We have a Better at Home program funded by the Ministry of Health through United Way, which is a tremendous support for light touch services for people who are housed to stay in place. And our program also offers, in the fourth stream, overarching supports, because we recognize that seniors who are homeless battle depression and anxiety, even though they're not diagnosed. So they're situationally challenged. So we provide, through this program, free or sliding scale services, as well as legal services to seniors, whether it's for dealing with a child who may have tried to abuse them, or power of attorney that needs to be reversed. And we don't have that expertise, but we've partnered with agencies, and they're part of this program, so any senior in this program can access them. And last but not least, with tremendous support from the provincial government, we have what we call these super groups that come to every city, and they are able to come with Service Canada, CRA, Ministry of Poverty Reduction, and they have meetings at the city level for a senior who's 64 going on 65. And it's like that song, right? 16 going on 70. But they actually are able to catch it a little bit early, and really pleased to say the last 2 years, we've only seen 2 seniors in that gap. And then last but not least, every senior who works with us is encouraged to do something, whether it's volunteer, and not for us, but feel a sense of citizenship. So they all do something for somebody, to 80% of the time for themselves, and 20% of the time they're encouraged to do something for somebody else. And that has been the most transformative piece that we've heard, where a senior who's receiving services ends up giving the service to another senior a year later. So that's it, and you'll get all these slides, so you'll have all of this information. These are the partners we have across the province. And as I said, as of this month, in North Vancouver, we've got another agency that has just joined. Their homeless population went up in the point-in-time count to 67%. And they said, well, we can't wait for the province. We can't wait for anybody. We're going to self-fund. We got to do this. So they're doing that as of now. This is last year's outcomes. So last year, this program, even though it was 809,000 for the whole year for 13 cities, so if you can imagine that, 8.4 FTE divided across all of those cities. These were the outcomes we got from clients and from partners. It's a busy slide, but it gives you a sense of the outcomes. And what we've seen is that these are 3 links that you'll also get. Cities like Vancouver have embedded this program into their seniors housing strategy. CMHC has recognized it and suggested it as a promising practice to be scaled up for cities across the country. And it's been studied academically by at least 4 different research groups and identified as a promising practice. And here, in keeping with our need for awareness, we were recognized last year in November, which was quite a surprise, with a humanitarian award from the BC broadcasters. And that came with $1 million of TV and radio time. And for an agency who does, our total budget is around $0.2 million, that was a gift. So we took the time to have this video made, and I want to share it with you. It's only 30 seconds.
When you lose your home, it feels like you're losing everything. 1 in 10 seniors are homeless or at risk. Seniors deserve better. A message from the broadcasters of BC and the Senior Services Society.
Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, but thank you very much.
So it's now time for our last presentation. Kamara Rain and Katie Thomas from Homeward Trust. I'll let you do it now.
Give me 1 second. Okay. Is it?
The top one.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, wonderful. I'm hoping most people in the room can see me. I can't use the podium for what I hope is also obvious reasons. But my name is Katie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the training program specialist within Homeward Trust.
And my name is Kamara, and I'm the team lead with coordinated access at Homeward Trust.
Yeah, and our presentation is on bolstering diversion efforts through training. So while our moderator delivered a land acknowledgement and a treaty acknowledgement ahead of all of the presentations, I always think that it's good to start any training or presentation with a land acknowledgement. For me personally, as someone who has only settler ancestry, I know that we can't adequately discuss ending homelessness without centering that conversation on the land in which we're trying to end homelessness on. So, Kamara and I would like to welcome ourselves as visitors. We join you here from the land of Edmonton, Alberta, which is situated on Treaty 6 territory. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganigiha is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters at which we gather today. And Montreal, or a Jojagay, is a gathering place for many First Nations groups and individuals. As visitors, we would like to thank these communities for welcoming us that have deep connection to this land. We honor the enduring presence, resiliency, culture, and history. Okay, so for today's presentation, it's going to be Kamara and I switching back a couple of times. But the main learning outcomes that we're hoping that you're able to take away from today are recognizing the power and the impact of diversion efforts that they can have when included in a community-wide approach to ending homelessness, and then really understanding how to create diversion efforts and support cross-system partnerships through training and specifically diversion training. So Kamara and I are both from Homeward Trust Edmonton. Homeward Trust plays a number of different roles within the city of Edmonton, but we are a community-based organization committed to eradicating homelessness in Edmonton. We really lean on the power of community, innovation, leadership, and strategically investing resources for the greatest impact. So we play a planner role within Edmonton. We have a lot of focus on homelessness reduction innovation, contracting services out. And then another part of the role that we play is operating what is referred to as the training program, which focuses on professional development and capacity building for a number of the frontline services and the frontline workers within Edmonton's homelessness system response. So we'll talk a little bit about that more later, but this is just to situate who Kamara and I and where we come from.
So understanding diversion, we'll start by talking about diversion and where it fits into the broader response to end homelessness. So what is diversion? It's really a person-centered problem-solving method that aims to prevent experiences of homelessness and reduce prolonged periods of housing instability by working collaboratively with individuals and families to explore safe alternatives, drawing on both their personal networks and leveraging available community resources as well. This can include reconnecting with family or friends or identifying short or long-term housing solutions that fit the individual's circumstances, their goals, and immediate needs. By partnering with individuals, we can co-create sustainable housing solutions, whether these already exist within their network or within community as well, such as rental assistance programs, transitional housing, and other supportive services. At its core, this work involves strengths-based conversations that help uncover or build on existing housing solutions while supporting the individual's autonomy and dignity. It includes identifying barriers, guiding individuals through housing navigation, and supporting problem-solving to reach a housing resolution. This approach is collaborative by nature and rooted in respect, empowerment, and choice. Diversion isn't limited just to housing-focused agencies, organizations. It can happen anywhere people across community seek services such as libraries, hospitals, and other service touchpoints where people are already seeking support. Anyone working adjacent to the homeless serving sector can play a really meaningful role in identifying opportunities and supporting people at risk of or currently experiencing homelessness. This work is really essential part of the homeless response system and the continuum of housing supports, which we'll explore a little bit further in the next section. Awesome. So when we consider the homelessness response as a whole, it functions as part of a continuum, ranging from early prevention efforts to intensive housing and support services. Each part of this continuum plays a distinct and essential role in creating a coordinated and effective system. Diversion is situated at the front part of this response. It offers an early and impactful opportunity to prevent people from entering homelessness, or if they are already experiencing a crisis, to support a more rapid resolution. This approach prioritizes early intervention, working upstream to resolve housing crises before they escalate into more chronic service involvement. Prevention strategies complement this work by supporting individuals in maintaining existing housing, while higher intensity services further along the spectrum. They also provide and offer more wraparound support for those individuals who might need higher or more complex care needs. In Edmonton, the system is built on a low barrier philosophy, prioritizing access to housing without requiring individuals to meet preconditions or housing readiness, such as having ID. The goal is simple yet powerful: to meet people where they're at and support them into getting into housing as quickly as possible, and then wrapping the appropriate supports around them for long-term stability. It's important to note that diversion is not only a program, it's an approach. While there are formalized diversion initiatives in place, the goal is to embed diversion thinking and practice into each area along the housing continuum. Throughout all touch points in the homeless response system, which includes interactions in shelters, healthcare settings, and other community services. When we talk about ending homelessness, this distinction is really critical to support reaching functional zero, to address both current experiences of homelessness and also prevent new ones from occurring wherever possible. Diversion, when applied strategically and consistently, is really key to achieving this. It takes a coordinated community-wide response to end homelessness and relieve the growing pressures we see across the system. So we'll take a bit of a closer look at some of the current pressures that we're seeing and operating within. So this graph shows the current system pressures we're experiencing in Edmonton, more specifically what we're seeing within coordinated access and just the broader city. When we take a look at inflow and outflow on the graph at the left here, represented by our by name list data, the blue column shows individuals entering homelessness, while the pink shows those who have been housed through the program. What we're seeing is that while housing outcomes have remained consistent and even increased, the inflow of individuals experiencing homelessness is more rapid and rising. This is what we mean by system pressure. It's not only about program capacity, but the growing demand across every access point and community. Each contact represents an individual seeking housing or support assistance, and without early intervention, these households often end up entering or re-entering homelessness. We can see in the second graph that the pressures also are on the front end of the support system. So our coordinated access team now receives over 2,000 calls, up from just over 700 in 2020. This is from individuals and service providers seeking housing information or assistance. The growth reflects both increased awareness of services, but also the mounting pressure on the system of individuals just connecting for supports. While diversion is not a replacement for housing interventions, as some individuals will still require more intensive housing supports, it does create an intentional space at the earliest point possible to explore safe alternatives and reduce entries into homelessness. Without this, inflow will continue to exceed outflow. This is why diversion cannot exist solely as a program level practice, but must be a system level response. Katie will talk a bit more about this and how providing tools and training supports in this effort.
So when we look at the amount that there's increasing pressure on our system, and knowing that there is a large population of individuals and families who maybe don't necessarily need intensive levels of supports in certain programs and interventions that Kamara described, one of the questions and sort of the problems that we were looking to solve was how do we increase the amount of diversion efforts that are happening in Edmonton, regardless of if they're happening at places where someone would normally go to get housing location support, but really also like how can we increase the amount of diversion efforts that are happening at places where the staff might not necessarily be formally trained in how to help someone get housed. So the focus and the solution that we've been working on is by providing training and tools to different agencies and to different frontline services and staff members who wouldn't necessarily have training on how to be able to house someone. A reality that I know a lot of communities across Canada are facing, and really just across the world, is that there's a number of people who are experiencing homelessness for the first time. The presentation that we saw ahead of ours actually really also highlights that there's a number of individuals and families who are maybe experiencing homelessness for the very first time, and that understanding of how to go from experiencing homelessness to housing can be very difficult and confusing and hard for people to navigate. But then also on the flip side of that, it can be hard for staff members in different agencies and in different places to be able to know how to properly support them when those individuals and families don't necessarily need intensive levels of support. So the training that we provide to the public for free focuses in on equipping attendees with necessary skills and knowledges to complete diversion efforts. We won't go through the whole training today. We don't necessarily have time. But the content really focuses on an overview of Edmonton's homelessness response system, including other programs and interventions. Something that we heard from a number of different agencies and different frontline staff was a lack of potentially understanding of why diversion matters, why it's important, and why we can't just refer every single person to the highest level of needs and the most intensive level of services. So it's key to be able to provide that overview of Edmonton's homelessness response to get their buy-in into why diversion matters and why diversion needs to be included in a lot of those conversations. The second content piece was really a roadmap on how to complete the diversion efforts. Again, it's confusing for those who are experiencing homelessness for the very first time or the fifth time on what their housing journey is going to be and how to reach the end goal of housing. But it's also really confusing for someone who's not familiar with the system, not familiar with the sector, and who may have never known or have never experienced homelessness. So a key aspect is really equipping the staff with the understanding of how that housing journey can happen, what is involved with it, and how they can support that person to be able to then be housed. And then the third and final sort of learning objective is providing expert insights on housing solutions, including available resources and ways to overcome typical obstacles. So we're coming from Edmonton, Alberta, which we heard a little bit about in the very first presentation of today. So an example of something that we provide in the training is connection and information for attendees on where resources are and how they might be able to connect their clients with those resources. So we refer to the Navigation Center as well. So this is a little bit of a breakdown, a very simplified version of the sort of diversion process that we include within our training. Again, going back to the idea that staff might not necessarily know, and we understand that a lot of the staff who are attending our training aren't coming to that training to learn how to be a housing worker. They have a role and a job that they have to fulfill. So we've tried to provide a really like roadmap or process map for those staff of like key sort of actions that they can do while delivering diversion efforts or helping divert that person away from experiences of homelessness. So there's a focus on identifying needs and barriers, helping explore with that individual or family what the barriers are that they're facing when trying to resolve their experience of homelessness, what their needs are, and then exploring really those available resources, who they can connect to, what natural supports that they have already existing that they can leverage into support that will allow them to be able to be housed. And then the third step is really that problem solving and resource navigation. So one of the things that we highlight throughout the training is that for people who are experiencing homelessness, again, especially if it's the very first time, it can be really difficult to navigate a system when you're experiencing a level of crisis and a threat to your safety that you maybe never have experienced before. So part of that role isn't necessarily giving them all of the answers and giving them all of those tools and exactly where to go. Sometimes what they need is help to be able to understand where they can go, what the issues are, and how they can sort of navigate a system that they might not necessarily be familiar with, or adjacent systems that they're not necessarily familiar with. And then the last step is how you wrap up that conversation. So diversion efforts and those diversion conversations rarely end with that person immediately being housed. Rather, it's helping walk that person through what their next steps are and what else they can do to be able to be as housed as independently as possible. Like Kamara said, diversion isn't meant to replace like a program. It's not meant to be like a new program where we're distributing workers throughout a number of different community agencies. What we're trying to do is bolstering the amount of knowledge that people have and skills that they have to help that person or that family be as housed as independently as possible and navigate that system themselves. So the next step or the last step might just be identifying what they're going to do, writing it out for them, and helping them figure out where their next step is going to be, what the next sort of task is that they're going to complete to move them closer to being able to be successfully housed. We talked a little bit about how on top of delivering the training, we also provide the attendees, but also just the general community, access to different tools. So this is a modified version of what Kamara and I have created called the Housing Action Plan tool, and we have hard copies available for those who are interested in it. So the tool is an essential part of the training, and it is incorporated throughout the training that we provide to the attendees. It, again, highlights that diversion process and understanding of what the steps are that might be involved in someone being able to be housed. But the main goal and role of the tool is not necessarily to be something that's used by the workers. It's been intentionally designed to be a tool that's used by the individual or family who is experiencing homelessness. So with the fact in mind that diversion is meant to be done as independently as possible, that it is a strength-based and empowerment approach, we've designed a tool to help guide that individual and family through what their housing needs are, identifying what available resources they might want to try to connect with, and really plotting out that housing journey. The tool has been designed to be able to be used multiple times with the same individual and family to move their housing journey along forward, or it can be used just one time for that person and they write out all of their steps. But it's meant to be an assistance to them and help really guide and provide that framework, laying out what resources they might want to connect with, their housing needs, and where really they're going to go next and how they're going to move throughout the housing journey.
So diversion training is really geared towards staff who regularly engage with people who are experiencing homelessness, even if housing support isn't the main focus of their role, such as domestic violence programs, libraries, hospitals, and agencies who support individuals who have experienced human trafficking. The goal is to create a system where everyone can act intentionally to reduce inflow and strengthen housing stability at first contact. By equipping the broad network of partners, we strengthen cross-system collaboration, coordination, and reinforce the no wrong door approach, so that wherever someone seeks help, they are connected to the right housing resources. Next, we'll look at why this training was created and the system need that it addresses. So the impact, through feedback from community agencies, we identified a gap. Staff who often encountered people experiencing housing instability noted that since they didn't work in the housing sector, they didn't always feel equipped to help and support individuals explore housing options or take next steps towards stability, even as they faced a growing demand of individuals connecting at their agencies seeking support. The training was created to fill this gap, to build knowledge, strengthen confidence, and expand capacity across the system. Ending homelessness requires thousands of people acting intentionally, not just a few specialized programs. Similar to our river, where countless drops come together to create a strong flowing current, this is what we're looking for from individuals to connect families and other supports so that they can resolve their homelessness. Every contribution helps move people towards safe and stable housing. The training and the tool were designed with this in mind. A structured, coordinated, and trained community approach ensures that more interactions become opportunities to prevent homelessness and connect individuals to the supports that they need. Now that we've covered who the training is for and why it was created, Katie will share about what we've heard and the real-world impacts of the training.
Yeah. So we've delivered the training a couple of times now. What we have heard from those who have attended, we did a sort of two-pronged approach to be able to gather feedback, an immediate survey from those who attended to be able to get insights into changes we might need to make in the training if things necessarily didn't make sense in a certain slide or portion of it. And then we also reached out to those who have attended a couple of months after to be able to gauge what the impact was on their work in their day-to-day, in their day-to-day work. So what we have heard so far from those who have attended and have filled out the forms is that it's increased the confidence and ability in non-sector housings or non-sector staff. So what we have heard back from them is that they feel more comfortable being able to have conversations about housing location, about providing diversion efforts and how that person or their client might be able to be successfully housed. And also really like a confidence in being able to understand why diversion is important and where it fits in to the broader approach of ending homelessness within Edmonton. It's increased, again, like Kamara said, the cross-system partnership leading to the no wrong door approach, where regardless of where you go in Edmonton, our hope is that if you are precariously housed or experiencing homelessness, you can at least get a little bit of help being able to navigate that system, whether it's at a housing location agency or whether it's at a food bank. The result really is going to be increasing housings across Edmonton. Because this is independently done, it's not a formalized delivered program. There's no way for us to be able to formally and distinctly say how many people have been able to be housed since delivering the trainings. But what we have heard from those who have attended is that it has made it more likely that they are having those conversations themselves, that they're doing that more intentionally and proactively, and that they're providing the tool and using the tool with their clients, which we know will increase the number of housings that happen in Edmonton, and that is really the goal. Okay, so that is all we have for you. This is our contact information, and then like Kamara and I said, we have the hard copy of the tool up at the front if anyone's interested.
Thank you for that fantastic presentation. So we have some time for some questions. And just for ease, I would invite you to come to the aisle to come ask your question. I'm happy to run around, but I don't think it's going to be very effective because there's big rows. And we do actually need to use the mic because there are folks using translation services and need it accordingly, okay?
Hi. I'm Laura. I'm from Waterloo Region, Ontario. We operate the coordinated access into the emergency shelter space of Waterloo Region. So predominantly my questions are for Katie and Kamara. Just regarding the community organizations that you did training with, you sought those organizations out to do this training?
It was like existing partner agencies that we already had in terms of like who we delivered the training to. It has been like existing partner agencies where we already had relationships with them, but our hope is that we can expand it and do a little bit more of like an outreach approach eventually. But so far it's been like those existing partner agencies or getting in contact with someone there.
And multi-sectoral, like have you been speaking with hospitals, carceral institutions, or predominantly housing resource centers, rent banks?
It's been mostly like cross like partner. So we had a number of those who work in the healthcare system last time, a couple of staff, I believe, from a food bank, one staff from a library, very few from like typical like housing location services, and it's really been more of that outside of the sector communities.
Okay, sorry, just very quick. Does Edmonton have your own coordinated access into emergency shelters or transitional housing? Or this is the work of these agencies, these community organizations to support people going into shelters?
Do you want to work?
I can help. So the coordinated access predominantly attaches to housing.
Okay.
In Alberta, just for shelters, but our shelters are housing based, so it's a bit of a twofold. So these ladies can talk to. There's, I think there's 60 some points of coordinated access across Edmonton. They're throughout the province, though, but they connect largely to housing programs, not necessarily shelters. So I'm just making that distinction because they are different.
Okay.
My question is for Robin. I love a good navigation center. They're so exciting. So good job. And it's nice to see when programs like work, people come back. You obviously created a great space. It grew enough that you had to relocate. Coordinating that many government partners, oh my gosh. My question for you is, you said you had 15,000 unique individuals. How did you keep that tracked? That's a lot of data, and I'm just curious what your information sharing looked like across like your different sections of government, and then consent and stuff like that.
Sure. So it was, I will say, a work in progress, but we use the tool. It's called Power BI. I am not a data person, but the individuals, when they come and register, so their information is captured. We do ask for first name, last name, but it's their choice if they want to give us their actual name. We don't care, other than for ID. It's helpful if it's real. So they are then tracked, and what's tracked is the connections that they make to what service they go to. So we track, like if you go to mental health and addiction, TIC, if you go to, and then each of those services have their own data and tracking. So we didn't get into like the health privacy information or anything like that, which can be a bit of a challenge. And then, so it's tracked, so we have the individual's name, so we know if they're unique, we know if they've returned. And then it goes in, we get daily updates. And I should have mentioned, these centers are open from Monday to Friday, currently right now from 8:30 to 4:30. They are government hours because these are government services. We have been just directed to in Calgary to extend hours. We'll see how that works because we really, the intent is not to be a drop-in center. It's really to connect to these services, but we'll see. So every day we get a report that is sent out to key people that says like, this number of people came through the center today, here's the connections that they made, and then it's a running total. So hope that helps.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? I guess I'm also curious about what your connection then looks like to other like community partners. Like, so you do in-house referrals or like whoever's in the NAV center that day with the other like governments that are there. What does the connection, I guess, look like to external partners? I guess like that would be where Katie and Kamaria kind of come into that.
Sure. So we do work on all things very closely with Homeward Trust. We have a very strong partner shelter operator within the center, so they run like the logistics of connecting people to shelters. They also connect in with Homeward Trust on housing workers, coordinated access, that type of thing. We have a community health partner in the center. We also have Indigenous supports within the center. So we have a variety of community partners. So largely government services, but community driven and kind of more, I would say, not all services, but that frontline coordination is really being done by the community.
Can I ask another question for somebody else? Going over to our Homeward Trust crew, I'm curious, so you talked about doing like the actual system navigation training for staff. I just think that's such a great idea. I'm wondering if you've branched out into other types of training, or have you kind of just started here and you're going to grow further?
So in terms of the training we provide, we have a number of, like a part of the Homeward Trust role is providing access to the training program, which provides like capacity building and professional development for frontline services and staff members within the sector themselves. We haven't necessarily opened like up more capacity building to the general public. The needs would be like so varied. And then also we want to respect the fact that we are the subject matter experts on a couple of subjects, and one of those is the training that we've developed. But yeah, so right now just focused on the sector that that we support, which is about like it's several hundred frontline staff. So it's a lot of data already.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for, there's one more. I apologize.
Hi, my name is Angela. I'm from the city of Airdrie in Alberta. And I have a question for Robin. So we're a very fast-growing city. We're just over 90,000. And my question is, we are located quite close to Calgary, but we also take on sort of the regional people at risk of houselessness, vulnerable individuals as well. I'm curious about the pop-up systems navigator centers, because currently right now for Airdrie, vulnerable residents are getting funding from a local service provider to try and get into Calgary to access the service. So just questions about the pop-up in the not Edmonton and not Calgary centers and potential supports. If they do have to travel in, does the government consider that travel cost?
So, just for knowledge in the room, Airdrie is the fastest growing community in Alberta, in a province that our migration and immigration rates are the largest just about in the world. So very fast-growing community, so absolutely recognize that. The pop-ups are largely being run by the RCMP and then bringing community together. So, and they're running, so there was one that was done in Wetaskiwin, which is a smaller community in Alberta, and they brought together the income support and the financial services for that day, mental health and addiction supports, and really brought that to the community for the day. So the pop-up, because the issue with the smaller communities is the connection to services, like you said, may not be in those home communities, so that makes it difficult, and the sustained population, the numbers that you need to kind of make these co-locations of services work in a longer term. It was highly successful in Wetaskiwin, so the RCMP is looking at another number of other communities. So if you're interested, happy to share the contact information with you for them, but that's kind of the pop-up, rather than how it was in Calgary and Edmonton, were government-led. It's really making those government services available, but in a way that makes sense, and really making that connective kind of tissue of the community leading it, which is smaller on that. It works better on that smaller scale, we're finding.
One more call for last question. Okay, please give a hand to these wonderful speakers.